Okay, I want you to visualize a very specific moment with me. It's, say, a Tuesday morning. The alarm goes off. And it's not a tragedy. You aren't waking up to some huge crisis. You're not, sobbing into your pillow. In fact, everything is technically fine. You get up, you brush your teeth, you start the coffee. You are functioning perfectly. You're going to hit every deadline today. You'll reply to every text with a smiley face. But there is this low-level hum in the back of your brain, almost like a refrigerator running in an empty room, that just asks, why am I doing this specifically?
Right. And it's so crucial to catch the nuance of that question. It's not asking why live, it's asking why continue doing these specific things.
Exactly. It's that subtle, almost haunting distinction. It's not a desire for death, but it's also not a true desire to live the way you are currently living.
It's the space between.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we are unpacking a really heavy, but I think incredibly relatable topic from our source material. It describes a psychological state that, well, it doesn't really have a common name in our day-to-day vocabulary.
It's the in-between. And the source makes a massive point of clarifying what this is not. It's not depression, though people often label it that. And it's not burnout, where you are physically and mentally just cooked. It's this weird limbo where you don't want to die, but you don't feel connected to your life anymore.
It's a silent crisis. I think that's really the best way to frame it.
Yeah.
If you look at how our society is structured, we have very clear frameworks for the extremes.
Yeah.
If you are full of life, ambitious, crushing your goals, great, we have a path for you. We have awards for you. On the other side, if you're suicidal or in a massive crisis, we have emergency protocols, we have hotlines. But for the person who is simply existing, the person who is functioning perfectly on the outside but is completely hollow on the inside, we don't really know what to do with them.
Because on paper, they look fine. They look reliable.
They look better than fine.
Yeah.
They look like the model citizen.
Yeah.
And that is why it is so dangerous. There's no external signal that the internal engine has just shut down. And that's our mission today. We are going to look at the psychological roots of this state, the social mechanisms that keep us trapped in it, and this part's fascinating, the uncomfortable strategies the source suggests for navigating it. And spoiler alert, none of them involve thinking positive or, manifesting abundance.
No, absolutely not. This isn't a self-help poster.
Yeah.
The source is very clear that this state is defined by a withdrawal from meaning. And that's the first big distinction we need to make. This isn't about sadness. You can be in this state and not feel sad at all. It's about the separation of your biological life from your spiritual life.
Okay, break that down for me. Biological versus spiritual.
Well, think of it like a pilot ejecting from a plane. The biological life is the plane. It keeps flying. Your heart is beating, your lungs are breathing, your hands are typing emails, you're nodding in meetings, the mechanics are working. But the spiritual life, and we don't mean religious here, we mean the part of you that assigns value and meaning to things, has ejected. The pilot is gone. The plane is still flying on a preset course, but there's nobody home.
That is a terrifying image, the autopilot life. The source explicitly says we don't want to die. We just don't want to live like this anymore. It describes this concept of unnamed cumulative fatigue, which I think is such a powerful phrase, because usually when we think of fatigue or trauma, we look for the explosion, right?
Exactly. We look for the car crash, the divorce, the firing, the big bang.
Yeah.
But this fatigue is different. It's not caused by one shock. It's caused by hundreds of days of living correctly. You did everything right. You were polite. You paid the bills. You showed up on time. You didn't cause a scene. But those actions had nothing to do with you.
It's the exhaustion of compliance.
Yes. It's the weight of wearing a mask that is just slightly too heavy every single day for 10 years. The source makes this point that meaning shifts from being an experience to being an obligation. You don't wake up because you're excited about the possibilities of the day. You wake up because if you don't, things get messy. You lose your job, people get mad, the electricity goes off.
Fear of consequence becomes the only fuel.
And that fuel burns dirty. It leaves a residue. The source actually brings in two heavyweights of philosophy to explain this, Camus and Dostoevsky. And their take is really interesting because it validates this feeling instead of pathologizing it.
Which is rare. Usually if you feel empty, you're told you're broken.
Right. But if Albert Camus were looking at this state, he wouldn't see it as weakness. He would see it as a natural consequence of realizing the absurdity of life.
The absurdity being that we're doing all these things without a clear why.
Precisely. It's that moment you look at the spreadsheet you're building and you think, in 100 years, nobody will know this existed, so why am I stressing about the font size? That's the absurd. The in-between state is a state of suspension. You realize the script is absurd, but you haven't found a way to revolt against it yet. You're not rebelling, but you're not accepting it either. You're just floating.
And Dostoevsky, he's usually pretty intense.
He is. He would call this consciousness paralyzed. The source summarizes his view as, not enough despair to destroy yourself, but not enough faith to act.
Wow. That is the definition of stuck.
It's a very specific kind of hell. You aren't at rock bottom. If you were at rock bottom, you'd be forced to move. You'd have to change to survive. But here, you're comfortable enough to stay miserable. It's a numbness. It's not a sharp pain. It's a dull, pervasive silence.
Not enough despair to destroy yourself. Not enough faith to act. That's going to stick with me. So let's widen the lens a bit. Because the source argues this isn't just happening inside our heads. It's not just that we're all individually broken. It's that society is actually set up to produce this state.
This is where we get into the social roots. One of the biggest culprits the source identifies is the saturation of goals. I mean, think about how we are raised. From age 5, life is a ladder.
Get the gold star, get the grade, get into college.
Get the degree, get the internship, get the job, get the promotion.
Wow.
We are experts at striving. We are trained to hunt goals. But the source points out a massive gap in our education. We are never taught what to do after we achieve the goal, or, more importantly, what to do when the goal loses its flavor.
That's the what now moment. You climb the mountain, you stick the flag in the ground, and you look around and go, is this it? Is this the feeling I worked 20 years for?
Exactly, and that creates an internal void. But here is the trap, and this is a key insight from the text. Modern society allows existence without belief. This is a crucial point.
Yeah.
To function in the modern economy, you do not need hope. You do not need big answers to existential questions. You do not need to believe in a higher power or a great destiny. You just need to operate. You need to be a functional cog.
So meaning doesn't explode in a dramatic crisis, it just erodes. It wears away because it's not required for daily maintenance. You can go 10 years being highly productive without ever feeling a moment of genuine purpose.
Right, and this leads to that terrible isolation the source describes. You're surrounded by people, family, co-workers, friends, but you can't turn to them and say, I don't know what I'm living for, because it sounds ungrateful.
It sounds like a first world problem, right? Oh, my life is so stable and secure. Woe is me. So you stay silent. You stop talking to others about it. And eventually, the source says, you stop talking to yourself about it.
And that silence is dangerous. The source actually points out a linguistic poverty here. We lack the vocabulary for this. We have words for success, failure, depression, anxiety, but we don't have a specific word for living without wanting to live. And because we can't name it, the experience feels vague. If you can't name the monster, you can't fight it. So it just sits there, invisible.
Let's talk about the mechanisms that keep us stuck here, because the source lists some really specific traps we fall into. The first one is life is maintenance.
This goes back to the idea that life is organized to maintain activity, not nurture meaning. It's a smooth repetition of tasks. The source uses this incredible image of a person sitting on a high-speed train. The train is running on time, it's on the right track, it's moving at the perfect speed, the engineering is flawless. But the person in the seat has completely forgotten why they got on the train or where they are actually trying to go.
But they don't get off.
They don't get off because the train is moving so smoothly, it's comfortable, the snacks are good.
That train metaphor is haunting. You're moving forward, technically, but existentially, you're stationary.
And we compound this with our obsession with optimization. We are culturally obsessed with efficiency, doing things faster, with fewer mistakes, hacking our schedule. But the source argues that this prevents us from staying with an experience long enough to make it our own.
Can you unpack that a bit? How does efficiency kill experience?
Well, if every moment is just a stepping stone to the next moment, the now becomes hollow. Think about it. If I'm drinking coffee just to get caffeine to wake up to work, the coffee has no value in itself. It's just a tool. If I'm reading a book just to have a talking point for a dinner party, the reading has no value. When your whole life becomes a toolkit for a future that never arrives, you're never actually here. You're always preparing for there.
Which leads to the I'll think about it later trap. I feel personally attacked by this one. We indefinitely postpone the big why questions. We say when I'm less busy, or after this project is done, or when the kids are older.
But let me ask you, when does less busy actually happen?
Never. It never happens. The vacuum just fills up with new stuff.
Exactly. Life becomes a chain of avoidance. And we comfort ourselves with false stability. We think, well, I'm not in crisis, I'm paying my bills, so I must be okay. But the expert insight here is that stability does not equal aliveness. You can be perfectly stable and completely empty. In fact, stability is often the perfect hiding place for emptiness because nobody questions it.
So we've got this hollow stability. What does that actually do to us over time? What is the existential impact? The source lists some really specific symptoms, and they aren't physical symptoms like a cough or a fever.
No, they are symptoms of the soul, for lack of a better word. First, time flattens. Days lose their weight. You know how some days feel memorable, heavy with significance? In this state, time just passes. It leaves no mark. It's not about being busy, it's about nothing being important enough to give time a shape. It's all just gray slurry.
It also talks about spectator mode, the feeling of being detached from your own life, like you're watching a movie of yourself going to meetings and buying groceries.
Detachment is a defense mechanism. It's disassociating. You're watching yourself say, let's circle back on that, and you're thinking, who is that person? But the scariest impact, according to the source, and this references chemists again, is the loss of resistance. When we stop resisting the meaninglessness, the absurdity wins. Not through a tragic defeat, but through normalization. We just get used to the void. We accept that this is just how it is.
And identity starts to erode. The question, who am I, becomes really fluid and weak because there's no purpose holding it together. We replace self with role. I am a podcaster, I am a parent, I am a partner. But if you strip those roles away, who is left underneath?
That's the terrifying question. When the role wears thin, if there's no self underneath, you feel like you're disappearing. You become a ghost in your own life.
Okay, I want to pivot to the structural side of things. We've painted a picture of society as this sort of soul-crushing machine. But isn't society just neutral? Why doesn't the world care that we're all walking around like hollow shells?
Well, to be blunt, society doesn't care because the economy doesn't need meaning. It needs function. A person without purpose who still shows up to work is a perfect cog. In fact, they might be a better cog because they don't rebel, they don't ask difficult questions, they just execute.
The source calls this the crisis-only response.
Right. Society has interventions for breakdowns. If you stop functioning, if you have a breakdown and can't work, society steps in. Doctors, therapy, leave of absence. But as long as you are replying to emails, you are labeled fine. There is no intervention for functional emptiness.
And we glorify endurance. The source calls it the moralization of endurance.
Oh, absolutely. The grind set. We view suffering and silence as maturity. Oh, look how strong they are, just keeping their head down and working. It's a very dangerous narrative because it frames your emptiness as a virtue.
There's another concept here I want to highlight, which I think is a huge intellectual nugget from the text. The privatization of meaning.
This is critical. Society has essentially said, we will provide the economy, the infrastructure, the roads, and the internet. Meaning, that's your problem. If you feel empty, society tells you that is your personal failure. You need to fix your mindset. You need a hobby. You need to meditate. It absolves the environment and the structure of any responsibility.
It says the world is fine. You are the one who is broken.
Exactly. It pathologizes a rational reaction to a hollow system.
Which brings us to the most practical and honestly the most difficult part of the source material, the uncomfortable strategies, the way through. And the first thing the source says is, there are no quick fixes.
This is crucial. If you are in this state, do not look for a happiness hack. Do not try to solve this in a weekend workshop. The source warns explicitly against trying to fix this quickly, because this isn't a problem to be solved, it's a transition to be navigated.
So step one is labeling truthfully.
Yes, stop gaslighting yourself. Stop calling it depression if it isn't. Stop calling it burnout if it isn't. Stop calling it weakness. You have to admit to yourself, I am living, but I don't know why. This honesty stops the fragmentation of the self. It stops the energy drain of pretending.
And then, and I love this advice because it goes against every Instagram influencer out there, stop seeking a big purpose.
It sounds counterintuitive, right? You feel purposeless, so shouldn't you look for a purpose? Shouldn't you go find your destiny with a capital D?
Right, isn't that the solution?
No. When you are existentially exhausted, the pressure to find your life's purpose is damaging. It's too heavy a lift. You can't deadlift 500 pounds when you haven't eaten in weeks. The source suggests lowering the bar significantly. Ask yourself, what can I do today that doesn't feel like a betrayal of myself?
That is such a lower bar, but it feels so much more achievable. What doesn't feel like a betrayal? Not what is my passion, just what is true right now.
Exactly. It's about separating your role from yourself. Realize that being a good employee or a good parent is a role you play. It is not the definition of your existence. You can play the role without becoming the role. This creates a little breathing room.
The source also mentions silent resistance. What does that look like?
It's small acts of reclaiming the self. It's not storming the barricades. It's taking a walk without a destination, refusing to be efficient for 20 minutes. It's having a conversation that isn't polite, but real. It's refusing to optimize every second of your day. These are small ways of saying, I'm not just a machine.
And we can't forget body maintenance. This seems so basic, but the source emphasizes it.
It's vital. Keep the body running. Sleep, eat, walk, even if the mind is stuck. A tired mind in an exhausted body cannot see clearly. You have to keep the vessel intact while the pilot is figuring out the map.
And finally, accepting not knowing.
This is the hardest one for high achievers. We feel like not knowing is a failure, but the source reframes this. It says, it is not a failure to not know why you are here. It is a transition. You are in the space between the old answers that died and the new answers that haven't arrived yet, and that space is valid.
So where does this leave us? The source concludes with this concept of the promised land. But it's not what we usually think of when we hear that phrase. It's not milk and honey.
No. The real promised land in this context isn't a place of joy or clear answers. It is a place of truth. It is a place where we stop pretending. It is the freedom to say, I don't know and I don't want anything right now without shame.
It's about dropping the mask.
Yes. The source argues that this state doesn't make life happy necessarily, but it makes it lighter. Because the weight of the mask is gone. You are no longer carrying the burden of performing happiness or purpose when you don't feel it.
It's the difference between carrying a heavy backpack of shoulds versus putting it down and just standing there. You might still be lost, but at least you aren't carrying the weight.
Precisely. And that lightness gives you the space to eventually maybe find something new, but you can't find the new thing while you're still pretending the old thing is working.
The source leaves us with a final provocation that I think we should leave our listeners with. The question that really forces you to look in the mirror.
It asks, if tomorrow brings no great revelation, if no angel comes down with a new purpose, will you continue to live merely as a habit? Or can you make the conscious choice to exist without a beautiful reason?
Can you choose to live simply because you are here?
That is the ultimate existential challenge. To choose life stripped of all the decorations.
Something to sit with today. Don't try to answer it immediately, just let it sit in the silence. Thanks for diving in with us.
Take care.